Alrighty, we are back, and the current state of affairs is we've got the side of the stem straight, although it's got this triangular flat edge on it, and the width of the button is very nearly its final dimension, and we've got, oh, I don't know, it doesn't matter if my guess would be right or not, a third of a millimeter, a fourth of a millimeter of elevation yet to remove on the base of the stem before we get to polishing and so forth. The next step, and look closely at the side of the squared off button here, and you'll see a white mark. And that was made the same way that we made the white marks on the base of the stem, by just putting a scratch there with a sharp tool and smearing some of that paste paint, that stick paint, into it. Now that mark is exactly aligned with the slot, and it's the base mark for the next bit of work we're going to do, which is this. We get into geometry here. It's necessary to move these flattened areas closer together at this end by a specific amount, which is until their point touches the back of the button, the face of the button down here. And the base of this triangular surface needs to move straight into the pipe. So that means the entire thing is going to end up tilting by a small amount, because those won't translate quite into the same, gosh, this is difficult to explain. They say a picture's worth 1,000 words. You'd think a video would be even better, right? Let me just put it this way. We want to lower the surface of this, well, all of these flat areas. Ignore the top and ignore the bottom. We got these four, we'll call them the sides, the four triangular sides, and we want to get them to be very nearly on top, is those white lines that are scratched in the back of the face of the stem. And then the point of them not only come down to touch the rearmost point on the button, but also go a little bit lower until that point is exactly aligned with the white mark, or ever so slightly above it. And whatever that translates into in terms of tilting and moving that triangular flat surface around, I won't even try to describe it other than just to show you, or just what I've just done. It's the best I can do. So we're going to now take some 150. I graduated from 100 grit to 150 grit, and the same little pre-cut pieces. I find it's really handy to have a stack of these around, because you're more inclined to switch to fresh paper when you need to, because you don't want to mess with dragging out the paper and cutting it. Now I've got a little a ladder style sandpaper rack over here that goes from the coarsest at the bottom all the way up, and it's really handy when doing a project like this or something, that you just keep taking sandpaper out of the next higher rung of the ladder, and you don't have to think much. You just climb it, and by the time you get to the end, she's cooked. All right. Now there's mixed reviews on whether or not reviews, but mixed opinions on whether or not you guys that have hooked into this channel want to see me actually do these tasks that are simple. And the catch is that some of you guys are just learning stuff, and it's not simple to you. You want to see how somebody does it who's been at it a while. So I'll from time to time just indulge here and give you some length of time of me doing this stuff for whatever might be learned. And if this kind of a thing bores you, then you just fast forward. So no harm done, right? Okay, so and I wouldn't recommend trying this freehand because the bounce in your wrist is going to reduce the accuracy. And once you kind of get into a groove of a single plane, you can get to going pretty good. Now I've replaced the hockey tape around the end of the shank with just some ordinary transparent, what do they call it, magic tape, because it's thinner. And it's still pretty tough. If you don't abuse it, it'll take a fair amount of abrasion before it cuts through. Now, we have an advantage in this particular case that if we do cut through the protective tape on the shank and leave a little flat top on one of these bumps that we made before, we'll just pull down the bristle brush and round, we can smear that mistake away, so to speak. It's just sandblast. There's no right or wrong, so you can kind of just make it look however you want within reason. So we can repair any scuffing marks that we might leave from this kind of a thing we're doing down here. Now keep in mind that if you follow this all the way to the end and kind of tip the board, that you can have what looks on the surface to be finished work in a very short time. And you'll say, well, gosh, what's going on here? Well, you've got to check what you're doing with one of these guys, because it's very easy to get a twist in this, that if you were to roll this over as you approach the button, it'll give the illusion from the side that you've done everything you want to do. But if you look at down the length of it when it's shined up and polished, and you'll see it's got a twist in it. So be completely sure that you are getting to your goal honestly, so to speak, not rolling the sanding medium over to cut corners, so to speak. Okay, let's check and see if I managed to do what I just said you got to do. And not too bad. It's a little bit high in the middle. And having checked my work as I do it all these years, I've come to the conclusion that I've kind of trained myself to err on the side of caution when doing this kind of a thing, because I seem to get more material removed at the bottom and the top than I do in the center, so that I end up with something slightly rounded, in trying to avoid the effects of dwell time. And that's easy to fix because you just chase the center, and you've got a mental picture, because you just measured it, of about how wide of a lump you left. And you just go after that for a second. And then you're back to flat. Yep, pretty close. So that's the process. And go up through the grades. I'm at 150, then like 220, 320, something like that, 240, 320. and keep going until you cannot avoid scuffing this guy, the protective tape here. And then we have to move to doing it by hand, meaning holding the stem in one hand and removing it from the stummel. And that's when the white lines will come in handy. Now, keep in mind, you're lowering this in that direction, this triangle, you're lowering it as well as swinging it closed like a car door. And the hinge is the baseline of this triangle. So, again, this is a complicated thing to describe, but not too easy to visualize if your head's in the game for geometry. And be warned, if you take any shortcuts, it'll show up in the, you can't run away from them, in the sense that when this gets polished to a mirror shine, if those surfaces aren't flat, you'll have like the county fair funhouse mirror. It'll just be wavy and distorted looking and terrible. It'll look better up until you shine it. You can really deceive yourself by having a well-sanded stem and think, boy, I've nailed this. And you shine it up and found out that you're short of your mark. So there you go. I'm going to continue to sand on this, reducing this as I just described, and I'll get back with you guys when I've achieved the goals, the endpoints, and we'll then shift gears, take the stem off, and continue. And then we'll be done with the hard part, shaping wise. We'll just have the button left to do. So, alrighty.